Today we're looking at chapters 13 and 14. So if you remember yesterday, chapter 12, it was all about spiritual gifts, and Paul actually flows that into chapter 13 where he talks about love. He makes the point in chapter 13 that love is the primary character for the Christian. We all have different gifts, but love isn't a spiritual gift, it's a spiritual character that everybody has to use. He says, if I speak in tongues of men but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. The gift of tongues is a gift, but if it doesn't have love, it's pointless. And he says in verse 2, if I have prophetic powers, prophecy is a spiritual gift, but I have not love, it is pointless. If I have all faith and I can move mountains, but I don't love other people, it doesn't matter. His entire point in this chapter is that we ought to love one another. I love what he says here about love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. It does not boast. It is not arrogant. It is not rude. So much of those things that I just described, it is not irritable. It does not insist on its own way. So much of that is the world that we live in. And he's saying that the church is to be a countercultural reality. Like your little family there in your neighborhood is to show the way of love and to not be arrogant, not to be rude, not to insist on your own way, but to love people well. And so that's 1 Corinthians 13. And then into 14, he talks more about spiritual gifts and how to use spiritual gifts. He talks specifically about prophecy and tongues in this church. Those were two gifts that were being used sometimes well and sometimes not very well. And so he talks about how to use them well in the context of the church. And then the last part of chapter 14, he ties it all together that these gifts are given to us. All these different spiritual gifts are given to us to build up the body. The character that we use these spiritual gifts with is love. The point is to love one another. And then there's an orderly way to do it. We practice our spiritual gifts in a certain way that it makes sense. That if a non-Christian comes to your church gathering or to your Bible study, that you're actually trying to be sensible to that non-Christian so that you could help them to learn who Jesus is. That there's he's warning against us doing church or using our gifts in a certain way that would turn people off or would confuse them about who Jesus is. So he gives us an order for how to do church in a way that it makes sense to anyone who may join our Bible study or our church gathering. That's chapter 13 and 14.